I'm just a very inspired and committed young man with a young family, and I've been very privileged to be studying life, studying human dynamics, human design, and meeting people over the course of my life that have been instrumental for making me understand better what reasons we could create to bring people together.
Absolutely. So you've been spearheading a anti-fluoride campaign in Kuranda, which has been somewhat successful and may well be a model for other communities to do the same and successfully combat the issue of fluoridation in the water. I guess, sort of assuming a background knowledge of the issue, how would you explain your successes and the measures you've been through to actually combat fluoridation?
Well, yeah, first and foremost, this has really been a community coming together with individual sort of leaders, if we wish to call them so, you know, being the knowledge bases and bringing those fronts together. There have been a number of people speaking out very clearly and very profoundly on the issue of being against the fluoridation of our local town's water, and I got on board to add a different perspective to the general way that fluoridation is being dealt with. And you know, it's the quote-unquote spiritual knowing that if you're against something, you're actually, you know, giving it energy and pushing against it. And instead, I really emphasize coming from the focus of being for, in this case, a fluoride-free environment, and walking that path of talking about being in fluoride-free environment, wanting to engage our local council and our local MPs on the issue on how can we create changes so that we will remain fluoride-free, because our community actually didn't have fluoride in the water to start with. It was just sort of impending, and it was coming, and so there was quite a bit of pressure building, and yeah, on many different angles in our community, the issue on fluoridation was raised, and on our website, Recharge Kuranda, there's a nice little basic doco that sort of takes people through the experience of what transpired over the last 2.5 years. Hannah Wattle, also known as Coconut Mama here in our community, started in 2009 barracking for a fluoride-free environment, and it's been a really big journey. And what's interesting is that the outcome of our collective work coming from the place where we came from has made a legislative change in the Fluoridation Act of 2008, and that was very recently done. And that legislative change gives the power back to all regional local councils to decide whether or not fluoridation actually needs to be a continuing program within the community, or whether they're going to pull the plug on it. And so we didn't just come out of the woods with a nice little piece of paper that we thought would be an interesting document. We actually presented something that works, and it actually works within the system, because once a mandate is delivered, and this applies to anybody's cause in Australia, like the mandate really is the legal way to get your will heard, and legally there's a legal obligation. Once you tailor your will, there's a legal obligation for the local representative or the council that you're addressing your will to respond to you. And on our website, Recharge Kuranda, the whole forum by which that is done and what steps to take is all listed, and people can just take an example My Will letter and change the topic. If you want to get GMO cropping out of your area, if you want to get chlorine out of your water, if you want to stop having Roundup being sprayed all over town and getting your kids sick, this is the pathway to plug it in. And as you say, there is a success built within that, because it is our constitutional process as constituents, but also as citizens within the Commonwealth. Transition is basically acknowledging, and Transition Towns actually was born in England as a rather revolutionary concept, taking the concepts of permaculture much, much further and actually taking community action within community towns. And that's spreading all around the world at the moment, and we're just another node for that, another hub, and we're doing something that is uniquely different, and that's because we can do that here. The transition hub here in Far North Queensland, we call it Recharge Kuranda to reignite community spirit. And one of the wings of transition is food. Another wing is looking at water. Another wing is looking at energy. Another wing is looking at economy. There's another wing that looks at transport. Because what transition does, it acknowledges that the current trajectory path that we as a society are on is an unsustainable model. It is driven highly on petrochemical inputs. Let's just sum it up: unsustainable. Boom, done. We don't have to go into that. We don't have to educate people anymore about how unsustainable it is. People will just say, "Yeah, you're right." It's just simple, common knowledge. We all know it. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Are you going to therefore say, well, let's all massively plug out of the system and let's go live in the bush? Well, that would be great, but how is the rest of the community going to travel if you're just going to go away? Because they might not be in the awareness that you are in. So how we see transition and our responsibility of our awareness, of knowing that we are on an unsustainable trajectory as a society, we can only affect our local area where we live. And so local action with global awareness. And so what makes the hub work here is that we have a local food network here in the region called Real Food Network. I accidentally am the creative director of that Real Food Network, so there's a bit of conflict of interest for the greater good, because I drive, together with a whole range of volunteers, a community-supported agricultural network, and we work with 86 different farming families around year-round, so around the seasons. And we source and distribute the locally sourced fruits and vegetables to our local community. We service 5 different community markets every week, and we distribute 100-odd food boxes on a weekly basis as well. The community comes because food is a quintessential aspect of our survival. The community comes to go and buy integrally sourced, locally grown, totally supporting the local community, the local economy, local farmers, local everything. They come in and buy their locally grown produce and take that home. The money that they pay to buy that food not only supports the farmers, but Real Food Network makes a donation to our Recharge Kuranda Community Fund, and we have a memorandum of understanding that 20% at the end of each week is being donated to Recharge Kuranda, because Real Food Network, being a social enterprise, highly values the broader implications of what localizing a food economy can do, and we're just an example of that. So we have a symbiotic relationship.
Beyond just helping ourselves to all survive, we can help ourselves to thrive.
Yeah, well, it's one of the most important modus of operandi that I work through, because once we're in survival mode, we're in fight and flight, we're in opposition and duality, and we're going to be surviving, which sets ourselves up for a whole range of interpretations of reality that may not necessarily be true. Everybody could say, well, we're living in crisis times. Yeah, but the word crisis also means great opportunity in Chinese. And so and specifically my focus during this time in transition is that we want to thrive, and we want to create models in which community can come together and partake in that thriving, because when we create reasons for the community to engage itself with things that are intrinsic values that people will simply gravitate towards, community markets, community-orientated events, family gatherings, community gardens, community working bees, community skill building such as weaving, cob oven building workshops, working with natural materials. These are all aspects and the many talents that reside within our community that we bring in, which create reasons for people to connect with that. And that creates the resilience. It's sort of like a tough word to use for heart-to-heart relationships between us as a community. And the whole concept of thriving, I think, is fundamental for us as a community to actually transition in this time with positive spirit, with an open heart and an open mind, and actually seeing that we can bring into being a new earth, if you wish, that brings out the best in all of us, as opposed to excluding a whole range of things before we can even start beginning to move forward. And that's I suppose the difference between survival and thriving. It's an underlying, more deeper consciousness, if you wish, that I personally come from in my work. I'm the guardian, founder and director of a global organization called Pachamama Spirit of Earth. And through my engagement within that organization and founding it and being part of the growth of that organization, I have gained a profound understanding and insight into the ways and models through which the new earth can be brought into being. And it's exactly how you say. It's part of the charter of Pachamama to bring forth the message of the ancient ones that speak about the great shift of the ages that we are in, and understanding their tribal ways, their ancient wisdom, and bringing that into our modern awareness. When we actually create appropriate, honorable space for those teachings, and we listen with an open heart and a clear mind to what the indigenous wisdom keepers and awakened indigenous leaders of today are sharing with us, we will find that they speak about everything that's dysfunctional in our current paradigm without blaming it, without condoning it, without judging it in any shape or form. They're just offering us an insight. And the insight is, we are fundamentally disconnected from nature. And they know nature much more than just environment. They know nature as Earth, Mother Earth, Pachamama, the mother of all beings, all sentient life forms living upon this planet. And they have a relationship not only to Mother Earth and their land, they have a relationship to all their relations. So when they speak to us from those ancient times, and they're knowing and remembering where they come from and how they themselves have lived with the land and all sentient life for thousands of years, they speak of a profound inner knowing and an inner connection to that life that I speak of. Well, Pachamama in essence means for the spirit of Mother Earth. It's a Spanish word para, and Pachamama being a word of the Ashwa people, but the Ecuadorian, Peruvian, Bolivian tribal people, the first peoples of those lands, all know the essence of Pachamama. And so that means Mother Earth. So we are for the spirit of Mother Earth. Our organization has been put into place to assist ancient wisdom teachings, awaken indigenous leaders, and our grandmothers and our grandfathers, to assist them in integrally sharing their message, integrally reaching out further than they can, and being the arms and legs for them in this modern world to speak to the heart of those awakening people that we are, and open something within them which we call remembering the truth of who we really are, which is not only children of this earth, but also children of the stars. And once we start remembering our relationship to all our relationships, once we truly step into that, guess what? We won't be doing any of what we're doing in our current paradigm, because we would live from a heart-based connection to all our relationships. And we would never cause harm to any of those relationships if we truly were to be honoring them and living in a sense of harmony with them. Well, how does that, all of that sort of deeper spiritual knowing translate to where we live today? Is that we have a different set of language in English, and we also come from a different mindset. So Parapachamama transfers that ancient knowing into more contemporary, readily understandable forms, means, even structures that we apply so that people can engage their minds into how to bring into being this change, how to bring into being the new earth, how to restore paradise. We all have an intrinsic remembering of what paradise living was like, and the indigenous world knows exactly how that was like because they lived that paradise consciousness for thousands of years. We know that with our current paradigm, we need to approach that world with a better set of language. So one of the focuses of Parapachamama Spirit of Earth, but it's an equally strong-held charter within Recharge Kuranda as a transition hub for Far North Queensland. We are here to assist, to bring into being a human presence upon this land, locally where we can, and inspire our global community to replicate the same, to bring into being a human presence that is not only environmentally sustainable, it is socially just, and it is spiritually fulfilling. When we take those three principles that have actually been born out of the consciousness of the ancient world through the Pachamama Alliance that we are closely connected and affiliated to, when we bring into focus that our commitment is to establish a human presence that is environmentally sustainable, socially just, and spiritually fulfilling, we're creating a full spectrum, holistic model for people to operate in. When we take those three elements as our core values, and we keep checking in with those core values, whether or not our actions are in alignment with bringing that through, you will find that transition gets a broader spectrum name, a broader spectrum reach. Permaculture falls totally within that. The biodynamic knowledge and wisdom keepers of Rudolf Steiner that is finding its resurgence so much more profoundly fits beautifully within the overall wings of transition and the full color spectrum of what we're wishing to bring through, because there's no singular model that actually will bring about the change that we truly and rightfully need to bring through at this time. It is all aspects of human creative endeavor that fall within those three principles that will bring about the new earth that you and I and our children and our children's children will live in. And we're very inspired to assist in that process.
And your way of celebrating and being involved in the Great Eclipse, which was actually a very profound astronomical event in terms of its uniqueness and timing, was actually quite amazing in that you helped to facilitate a gathering of global indigenous elders, which is wisdom keepers and elders from communities all over the world, from all different traditions, in one place at the same time to share that wisdom, to share that knowledge, to experience and be part of this great event and perform a ceremony. And what I'd like to know more about is like how you feel that made a difference and the effect of the ceremony and your experiences in being involved in this amazing gathering, which is probably a once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-history event.
Wow, such deep questions. Yeah, thanks for asking such really quality questions, because there is no disconnection of all of these fields that I seem to be involved in, as there is no disconnection in anybody's life as to what they're involved in. They're never separate aspects of our being. They're always part of our whole being nature. When I came to Far North Queensland, I actually asked my guidance, why I was here. And lo and behold, a week later, meditating on that question and sort of really being open to receiving an answer, I met the main organizers of the recent Global Elder Gathering held out at Yarrabah, and they asked me what I was doing, and I said, well, our organization fundamentally is one of its pillars assists global elder gatherings to reach a broader audience. We promote and integrally broadcast for those global elder gatherings to ensure that the wisdom keeping is brought together and that funds can be raised so that these very pivotal elder gatherings that are seemingly happening alongside of each other in more and more synchronicity all around the world, that they actually get help, that they actually make it, that they actually are being brought into full expression. And when I shared that with Ram and Maluka, the organizers, they were just like, wow, that's really interesting, because we are going to be hopefully holding an elder gathering during the solar eclipse that was back then, 2 years into the future. And 2 years ago, I found myself in Far North Queensland being right at the place where this being needed to be. What do you do in the meantime? Well, in the meantime, I did go about and setting up all these different inspired, divinely guided models based on an intuitive, femininely orientated flowing and finding. It's been a very organic process bringing these places and these networks into form. And ultimately, they have led me 2 years later to be in full responsibility and coordinating role of a gathering of elders and wisdom keepers from all over the world, with a additional element of including a platform for future leaders to sit in with elders and be able to listen directly there and then to their wisdom teachings, with a focus to also integrate the NGOs and the industry leaders to connect in with the vision of the elders and the calling they put forward, with young future leaders being inspired about reconnecting with culture and keeping culture alive and restoring it and bringing through the messages, and having the industry leaders and the NGOs there to actually be able to take on some of these callings, because once the elders speak and make known what it is that they want, it's our role as the younger generation to bring into form and into structure ways and means to actually act on what it is that they wish us to act on.